Hello and welcome back to ClearCast, the real estate fintech podcast. This is episode 28, 4 touchdowns, Kenon.
That is awesome.
I know you're a football fan, so I thought I'd kick it off with a little football discussion.
Oh yeah, I actually had to take off my jersey, for this to be more professional.
Episode 28, that's a lot. I'm Jeff Allen, joined as always by my colleague and friend Kenon. Kenon, how are you?
I'm doing very good. Thank you so much. I'm realizing I'm looking a little bit washed out right now. I feel a little ghostly in this current light. So
you do look a little ghostly, but it actually suits you. I know you're a big fan of 1980s British pop. So this actually gets kind of a Robert Smith vibe.
I guess I just won't be taking pictures for the gram today. So
take one day off if you could.
I'll do what I can.
So let's dig into the news.
Okay.
Pretty exciting news coming out of the mortgage space. Our friends and customers, Home Point, our big lender out there based out of Michigan, nation's third largest wholesale mortgage lender. Did you know that? Just launched an exciting new program called Home Point Cash Compete. And this is a cash offers program for buyers. So this is a type of model that's been trafficked in for the last maybe 2 years or so with more startup type companies, disruptor type companies. And this is now an indication that others who are maybe a little bit more incumbents might be getting into this. What does this all mean?
Yeah, it's super interesting to see a lot more partnership happening between, what seemed like was a more disruptive approach in space, starting with the rise of iBuying, and then, power buyers really enabling home buyers to act like cash buyers and have more competitive offers. And now it seems like, in this competitive purchase market that traditional lenders and power buyers are starting to team up even more closely to have intentional programs where they're bringing it to market, together. I think, some non-bank lenders, like I think Better Mortgage, right, at one point had a more of like a cash offer type, or guarantee type program that were out. So it's interesting to see now, the prop tech startup world and traditional mortgage lenders, teaming up.
Well, I think the fact that a really big incumbent like Home Point putting their effort behind a cash offer program is another indication of how crazy the market is right now, where contingent offers are considered second class, right? And the cash offers will typically win. So, I mean, this is just another indication of, buyers need alternative creative solutions to compete.
Absolutely. And I think too, it signals, that there's a difference between the way, someone looks at a home from an offer perspective, like what wins the bid, so to speak, and what it takes to get a mortgage. Those things aren't always together, right? You might have to bid much higher than what you normally would to just win the deal and actually make your offer look better. In this case, make it look more like a cash offer. But then, what happens when you go to convert that to a traditional mortgage? And what makes it through underwriting? This kind of becomes an interesting valuation conundrum too, right? Like, the price to win versus the price to get the loan approved could be two different things. So maybe there's some interesting alignment there between those two models ahead of time.
Absolutely. And as the market starts to shift a bit, more supplies coming on the market gets a little less crazy. Will these programs have the same value? I think they will. I think they're here to stay, but certainly a sign of the times that there's so many of these coming out. Let's shift our attention for the stat of the pod. We're going to talk about the hottest, newest acronym in the game.
Oh,
And that is SFR, which stands for,
I feel offended, actually. Was that an insult?
no.
Oh.
Why would it be an insult?
It just, I don't know, the way you said that, it had a little bit of a tone to it.
SFR, do you know what it stands for, or do you need me to tell you?
I actually need you to tell me now, because I'm
Okay.
coming up with other things. Yeah,
San Francisco Rice-A-Roni. Yeah.
of course.
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco. And you, as a Bay Area resident, I know most of your meals are rice-a-roni, so that's pretty fitting for you.
You know, it's a staple here in San Francisco. People eat it, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yeah, we're
And
actually kind of sick of it.
right. Like you're getting on the trolley car, heading into the Triangle building, going past the Full House.
Which is what everyone calls it.
Yeah, I mean, just San Francisco staples like that.
Sure.
Anyways, Kenon, SFR does not stand for that. It stands for single family rental.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah.
And here's the stat of the pod. It's hot in the single family rental sector. Gained momentum in the first quarter. SFR commercial mortgage-backed securities issuance reached 3.7 billion in the first quarter, which is nearly 125% higher than a year ago. And occupancy rates across all single-family rental properties averaged 95% in the first quarter, which is up pretty significantly from the prior quarter. So what's going on in SFR? Why are things so hot?
Wow. Well, I mean, obviously it's gaining a ton of momentum. A couple of anecdotes. In fact, last week was the SFR East conference, the IMN SFR East, and there were 1,800 attendees to this conference. I think it was in Miami, and you know, some of our team went, and there was just that, you know, that sort of tangible excitement and momentum. You can hear a lot of like small and medium players were there, really looking to establish their business and grow their business. Obviously, there's the big players in the space, Invitation Homes being one of them, that have really been dominating. But it seems like there's opportunity for a lot of smaller players to start getting involved, and even we're seeing kind of like dual business strategies where some companies are playing in both the iBuying, power buying space and the SFR space all at the same time. So, rental prices are going up as well as home prices are going up. So, it just remains highly competitive for a home buyer or renter, out there to be able to afford getting into a home. So, seems like folks want to cash into that.
Well, definitely something we'll be monitoring closely. The other thing that seems like it's attractive for companies who are more B2B companies getting into the SFR space is you're typically dealing with like really large entities who have standardized processes and want to buy product in bulk or service in bulk. So it's a little bit of a more interesting market for people to talk to than kind of onesie twosie moms and pops.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are excited today and privileged to have our special guest, who is Vincent Hodder, who's the CEO and co-founder of Locational. And Locational is a company actually that we know well, but a company that quantifies cities to best match people to places. And they do that through a number of different ways that we're going to learn about. And thanks for being here, Vincent.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And you're hanging out up in Montreal, so we're actually on an international call right now.
That's right. Yeah, the office is based here, and we started the business here in Montreal. But since COVID hit, we've kind of went fully remote. So we have teams all over Canada and more in the US, which is really exciting for us.
Very cool. So that was a really short intro. We'd love to learn more about Local Logic. Tell us kind of who you guys are and what it is you're trying to do.
Sure. So I think I like to start these intros with the fact that, we're a team of urban planners turned data scientists working in real estate. And I think that really informs our perspective on the market and how we're attacking a lot of these problems. And so what we do is we really try to quantify everything outside the four walls of an asset. And so the thing about real estate is that it's a unique product, a unique real estate asset in a unique location. We really try to tell the story of that location through thousands and thousands of data points that we assemble into meaningful indicators, really trying to express the vibe, the feeling of that location. We do that for over 250 million addresses across the US and Canada. And we make that insight available both on the residential real estate side and on the commercial real estate side, working with some of the largest brands in real estate, really trying to help either consumers, so home buyers, renters, really make the right decision as to where they're going to live, where their kids are going to go to school, the lifestyle that the specific location will enable them to have. And also working with some institutional investors, REITs, pension funds, and real estate developers, trying to help them understand both the potential of a site, but also the risks associated with a neighborhood, a specific location, and whatever use, whatever asset class they're looking to build in that specific location. And so really, we're trying to bring thousands and thousands of data, pieces of data into meaningful, actionable pieces of insights to help drive better quality decisions that are going to have an impact, hopefully a positive impact on us building better quality cities, cities that are going to work for people that actually live in them, and trying to tie the different perspectives of these different stakeholders so that we can actually get it to happen.
Yeah, and it's a really hard problem to solve. There's a ton of data out there, but actually making sense of it and making it intuitively useful to somebody, that's where the real magic seems to come in. And you guys have done some great jobs in terms of displaying the information, making it make sense to people. That's pretty impressive. We definitely encourage people to check out the website. So let's talk about your journey to how Local Logic got started. Not a lot of people at the age of 7 think, I'd like to start a location-based data company. Maybe you did, but tell us your story. What was your kind of flashbulb moment that led you here?
So it's funny that you say that, because I was the weird 7 or 10-year-old that didn't want to start a location intelligence company, but really wanted to be a real estate developer when I grew up. My family's been in real estate forever. My grandfather was investing both in the US and Europe and had all these crazy deal-making stories. And I was always really, really intrigued and convinced that I was going to be working in this industry in some capacity. And so I ended up doing a study in finance, started a CFA, went and worked for a real estate developer. Kind of for me, it was very, very clear. And then I quickly realized that I was one amongst many with the same finance background, the same perspective on the market, really didn't have any edge or differentiated view on specific real estate opportunities. And so my thesis at the time was, well, what if I can understand cities? What if I can understand the way that the built world actually impacts both the supply and the demand of real estate? What if I can understand how the way we feel is actually captured in real estate value? And there we really started to realize two things. First off, there's a tremendous amount of data that was becoming available at the time. There's more and more open data platforms. There was more things being quantified, more tech being invested as to ways to actually start quantifying things that in the past were maybe more difficult to make sense of. And then we also realized that, well, long story short, Gab and I, one of the co-founders, actually started a consulting company in real estate. We're working with some pretty big brands, and we realized that these were really sophisticated, smart people making quote unquote unsophisticated decisions, right? It was all about gut feel, intuition, experience. They knew the neighborhood, and they were deploying hundreds of millions of dollars into assets without real kind of objective understanding. And we felt like, from a financial point of view, if I put my finance hat on, it was kind of irresponsible, and you wouldn't see that in any other asset class. But then from a urban planning perspective, it was dangerous. It was dangerous because these were the folks that were building our communities. These were the people that were building the neighborhoods that we all get to live in, the decisions they were making as to what to build where, in what capacity, and for whom, had huge ramifications on the types of communities that we were building, how sustainable, how equitable they would be. And we felt like there was an opportunity to use objective data to quantify the impact of those decisions on the financial side of things, but also on the kind of community building or city building side of things. And so we took the gamble, and at the time it wasn't a startup, right? We weren't saying we're going to do this, but rather we were saying we think there's a real opportunity for this, and kind of we started while we were still in school, and kind of pursued, and we signed a customer, and then we signed another customer, and then we kind of built more product, and then we raised a bit of money, and you know, we joke around saying this is the longest school project ever, like it's the never-ending school project. And so here we are 5 or 6 years later, and you know, we're now starting to really impact some pretty large-scale decisions, and that's incredibly exciting, incredibly motivating for us, but also for the team that we've been able to assemble.
That's a super cool story, and the never-ending school project. I love that.
Yeah.
You know. So as you've gotten deeper into this, you obviously you came into it with a particular hypothesis, but based on the data that you have had access to and the way that you've been trying to enable, you know, more objective decisions with that data, what's been, well, first of all, what data is most important? Like, what are some of the signals that you're seeing, you know, that really do influence the livability and the decisions, you know, for a particular city? And then did anything like super surprise you? I guess the deeper you've gone, like has anything messed up your maybe original hypothesis?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. So, and I'm going to have a boring answer to that question, unfortunately, but you know, the answer is it depends. And I think that shows the difficulty of what we're trying to do. Essentially, the way we view cities is like it's this incredibly complex ecosystem, correct? Where every single facet of a location or of a specific neighborhood actually influences kind of the feeling vibe, right? So it goes to things like canopy coverage, or the percentage of the street that's covered by trees, the sense of enclosure, so the ratio between the height of the buildings, the width of the street, right? If you're on a really wide street with low buildings, it kind of feels open, it's less comfortable. It's going to be things like, you know, how many bars are around, right? Like that dictates if there's people at night. There's all these different things that you need to understand and quantify, and then all these things are interrelated, right? So if you have great transit, there's more people that are going to be there at all times of the day. There's destinations to go to, and they influence themselves, right? And so the reality is that if you look at the different stakeholders that are part of the decisions that are related to city building, or even like an investor, every investor is going to have a slightly different thesis. They're going to have a slightly different take on the market. And the difficulty is that we need to be able to isolate those different variables for each of those customers. And so, long story short, we need to be able to quantify everything, because if we don't have that holistic perspective, it's very hard to make sense of, well, what's the value add of this new bike lane that we suggest, or what's the value add of bringing in a grocery store on the, you know, in a specific new building. And so, so I think that's what's most surprising, is the difficulty with which, you know, the difficulty to go and capture all those elements. The second thing is, and I think we alluded to this a little bit earlier, I think nobody wants more data, right? People have a ton of data. They have more data than they can, you know, do anything with. And so the real value prop, the most important thing that we can focus on as a company when we think about building products is about the insights that data deliver. We need to go answer questions that people have. You know, folks are saying, should I invest here? Is this house the right house for my family? Those are the very important questions people are asking, and we need to go and build products on top, or we need to have data, build insights on top of that data, and then build products that distribute or visualize those insights in a way to answer those questions. And I think that's kind of our philosophy moving forward. It's really hard to do. I don't think we're always successful at it, but that's kind of the way we see the world and what we strive to do from a product building and company building point of view.
If it was an easy problem to solve, the market would be very crowded. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think like we were naive enough to take this on. And today we're in a good position where kind of we did a lot of the unscalable things. You know, back in the day, we called up thousands and thousands and thousands of municipalities in the US, like physically called them up for data. Like that's not scalable, right? But now we did that. We built tech to automate a lot of that. Now we have this crazy pipeline of data that's like really hard to replicate, right? And I don't think anybody with any sane person would want to take that on anymore.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about I mean, you guys are located in Canada, as we've discussed. That's where you got your start, but now you've really expanded quite a bit to the US, and you're managing data sets for the US and for Canada. Is that difficult? Are the property data markets very different between those two places? And why stop there? Why not Guam next? Or
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, no, it's certainly so I think being a Canadian startup, there's some clear advantages to that, and there's some clear disadvantages to it. We recognize that the real opportunity is south of the border for us. Like the reality is that Canada is an interesting market. It's where we got our start. It's where we can de-risk a lot of the initiatives. We know it well, but you know, we know that to have the impact we want to have in the world, we need to go and work in the US, and that needs to be the primary target. And so, you know, over the past few years, we've worked really, really hard to go and expand there. You know, more than half of our business is now there in terms of client count and revenue, which is really exciting for us. That being said, I think being a Canadian business, well, first off, you get access to some amazing tax breaks and R&D credits. And so we'd be foolish to not do that here. The Canadian government is quite generous on the innovation side, on the startup side. And you know, we're an hour and a half away from New York in terms on a flight, so it's not that bad. That being said, the data landscape is dramatically different. There's certain data sets in the US that are commonly available. You could purchase, there's a bunch of vendors for it that just don't exist in Canada. So a good example of that is school information and school catchment data. That didn't exist in Canada. There was no vendor that you can go to buy. So we actually are still one of the only vendors that have that accessible. Whereas in the US, that's not the case, right? There's a ton of people that do that. And there's a ton of examples like that where we had to kind of be creative in the way that we get access to data in Canada. And that's been good for us in some instances, but also been a huge headache in others. As we move to the US, I think there's also kind of different realities that we have to play around with, both on the kind of go-to-market strategy, the type of customer we go after. So there's been adaptation. The reality is that, you know, we have a team in the US now. We have a chunk of the business that actually is based there. We're recruiting everywhere in the US. We have folks in Atlanta, we have folks in the DC area, we have folks in on the West Coast. You know, I don't know if this is the case, right? I guess for most companies, like in a fully remote world, it's less of an issue than it would have been prior. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you talked about before, which is that really more about the impact, you know, that these private companies have on communities and the impact on people. I know, you know, one of the things that you've been expanding into is things like climate risk, things like you know, environmental impact, social impact. Talk to us a little bit more about the importance of helping these decisions not be blind to the impact that they have on people.
Yeah.
Based on what you're doing.
Well, I think, and maybe this is our urban planning perspective, but I think a lot of times when you think about city building initiatives, the problems that arise is one of, there are multiple stakeholders, right? There's consumers buying and consuming the space. There are developers of the private sector that are actually the ones building and putting money on the table to do it. And then there's governments, be it municipal governments or others, that are kind of regulating that whole industry, what happens, right? Through, in some instances, really bad policies, or in some instances, good policies as well. And so we see it as kind of a communication problem, and the fact that they're in silos. So they're not, it's very hard to translate the realities or the perspectives of one to the others. So if I'm to categorize, you know, if you take the perspective of a for-profit developer, for example, they're all about kind of the RRR, like what is this project going to give me from a financial perspective? And they don't really, or they're not that incentivized to build communities that are going to be better necessarily. Not to say that they don't want to do it, they just don't have the mechanism, the tools to understand really the impact, and they believe that the governments are going to be the ones kind of looking at that. Yet government don't necessarily understand the financial realities of a project, and vice versa. So what we're really trying to do is say, well, guess what? What you build where, when you determine what we call highest and best use for a parcel of land, the output of that decision will have huge impacts in how that community is developed. A really simple example is there's a food desert in a neighborhood in the city, and you're a developer and you come in and you build a grocery store as ground floor retail. That has a huge impact on the folks that are going to live in that development, but also on the neighboring communities, right? You transform a strip mall into a mixed use development that has a huge impact on what folks have access to, but also in the way they're going to get there, right? So if you think of it from a sustainability point of view, you have a strip mall. This is a car-intensive land use. You're incentivized to use your car to go to and from that strip mall. No real value to the people that live around it. You go and you build a mixed-use development. Maybe you put some proximity grocery or retail, so grocery store, pharmacy, daycare, whatever it may be. Suddenly, you're creating a really cool vibe, a great environment for the people that are going to buy into your projects, and I think there's value to that. But then the people that are, in the neighborhood that are there, that are maybe 2-3 streets over, are now going to walk to the grocery store. They're not going to use their car anymore. Their kid, they're going to walk their kids to the daycare or whatever it may be. And so there's a benefit to the community, and that has intrinsic value. And what we're saying is there's value from this community building point of view, but there's also financial value where the project that you're building is more attractive to folks, right? You're now creating a vibe, you're creating a neighborhood that is of value and that people want to go to, and you should be able to recoup some financial gain from that.
And one thing we could jump in on is earlier in the episode we were talking about single family rental and investors, and how hot that market is, and the decisions on where to, maybe even where to build to rent, is coming in. It sounds like you're seeing ways that you can advise those investors on thinking more about the holistic impact of where they're actually putting their investment in time.
Yeah, and I just thought about what I was going to say, so I'll tweak it into this answer. Essentially, what we're saying is, when you're looking at SFR or built to rent, or SFR specifically, I think what's interesting is that there's a huge volume of locations. Oftentimes those assets are spread over within different neighborhoods or within different areas. And so we're kind of automating a lot of that due diligence process. So rather than have boots on the ground and go visit those assets, well, you can speed up the time to get access to kind of the yes/no decisions on location characteristics. What's also really interesting is that you can quantify a lot of the future potential of that location. So we have customers actually using our data to say, well, what are the highest performing assets in my portfolio historically? What are the location characteristics of those assets? And then proactively understanding where similar locations with similar characteristics exist. And so they're removing yeah, I know that neighborhood, that seems good, I feel good when I'm there, and going fully objective and quantifiable metrics to understand potential future return. So that's really exciting, where you're kind of bringing a lot more rigor to your investment thesis. The other thing that we're saying is, as you're holding these properties, locational risks are huge, right? A location or a neighborhood evolves over time. Things change. The realities of the amenities next door are constantly shifting. And so you need to have a much more rigorous understanding of where that location is going, how those neighborhoods are evolving or changing over time, right? We call it internally this concept of like neighborhood drift, right? Of saying, where is this neighborhood going and what is it going to look like in 5, 6, 7 years? Is it beneficial to me or not? And so what we're advocating for is saying, look, location is a huge part of your investment. It drives about half of the value of that asset, and you have no control over it. You can't renovate the neighborhood. You can't change its use. You're in essence, you're dependent on that to change in a favorable way if you're to have the return you're expecting. And so you better understand it. You better understand where it's going or have an idea of where it's going. And I think that's where we can step in with some really cool, sophisticated modeling as to how that neighborhood is evolving or where it's going and where market demand is changing as well.
So to close us out, let's talk a bit about what comes next. What is on the horizon for LocalLogic that gets you most excited?
Yeah, so there's different timeframes here, but I think most immediately, I think we're really focused on launching a series of what we call predictive products. And so we have a ton of descriptive data, a ton of descriptive insights right now. We've been lucky enough to capture a lot of historical data as we've progressed, and so going to market and really giving that picture, giving the capability to our customers of really looking at how cities have been evolving, how neighborhoods or addresses have been changing, and then a prediction of where we think they'll be going. So that's one of the big pieces. On top of that, we're continuously expanding the amount of data or insights we're providing. So going even more refined in terms of trying to tell that story of a location. Beyond that, a huge pull from the market that we're feeling, a lot of our customers are asking for better understanding of transitional risks when it comes to climate, direct and indirect climate risks, as well as help on the reporting side for ESG. And given kind of our expertise at understanding both climate risks as well as being able to be really efficient in kind of giving the context of the location, which is a big part of those reportings. We're going to be launching some products around there. So kind of continuing our push on the commercial real estate side of things, but also bringing a lot of those innovations, a lot of those learnings, and tweaking it for consumers to be smarter, to build better experiences for home shoppers, home renters. And that's really exciting to kind of see both of those sides of the business really start to merge into one and provide all those stakeholders with more sophisticated insights as we progress. And then, geography. We're Canada, US. There's a ton more to do here. Europe, Asia, who knows? So, yeah.
Guam, Brazil.
Yeah, exactly,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you're fixated on Guam, Jeff.
Actually, and I think Guam is actually a U.S. territory.
It's a U.S. Yeah.
Easy. We'll do that.
just wherever. Well, that's awesome. I we really appreciate the time getting to know more about you and LocalLogic, and it sounds like you guys are positioned in the right spot to really do some cool stuff going forward. So thanks so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And no, we're super pumped and we're excited for the industry to kind of keep evolving, and we'll be there every step of the way. So yeah, thanks for having me on.